The Magic School Bus plays ball. When most classes play baseball, they go out on the field. But that's not what happens when you have a teacher like Miss Frizzle. In our class, when we play ball, we go on a field trip. It all started during recess. We were playing baseball. Ralphie was at bat, Wanda was pitching. The rest of us had taken our positions in the field. There was only one thing missing. "Hey, Wanda, where's home plate?" Ralphie asked. "There isn't one," Wanda replied. "You'll have to pretend." Wanda began her pitch. She lifted her leg high, reached back, and suddenly, Dorothy Ann raced out on the field. "Hey, you guys," she shouted. "Check this out. I just found the coolest thing." Ralphie scowled. "Dorothy Ann," he said with a groan, "not now. I'm one swing away from hitting my way into the record books." "But you've got to see this. It will change your lives," Dorothy Ann insisted. She held up a book. It was called A Child's Garden of Physics. Everyone burst out laughing. Change our lives? We didn't think so. "I'm really happy for you, Dorothy Ann," Ralphie said, "but right now I've got a game-winning homer to hit." "But you don't understand," Dorothy Ann said. "This book is all about what gets us moving and what makes them stop. Forces, frictions, pushes, pulls." Nothing could stop Dorothy Ann when she was on a roll. "Okay, picture a big red sled sitting in the snow," she explained. "It's not going anywhere, but if somebody comes along and gives the sled a push, it will move. That's a force. The sled will keep moving until something stops it, like some dirt," she continued. "Things rubbing together cause a force called friction, and the sled stops because the dirt is pushing it against the direction it's moving. This force against the runners is the friction in action. Friction slows down and stops nearly everything motion on Earth." Okay, so now we knew what friction was, but what we didn't know was why Dorothy Ann thought it was so important. Ralphie was tired of hearing about friction. He picked up his bat and tapped it at the dirt where home plate should have been. Then he remembered Dorothy Ann's book. The book would make a great home plate, Ralphie thought. It was flat, white, and just the right size. "Hey, Dorothy Ann, that book does sound kind of cool," he said. "It is, Ralphie," Dorothy Ann agreed happily. She thought Ralphie wanted to read the book. "And look at this, right here on page 97. Ralphie looked at the page. It showed a picture of a baseball field. "It would be impossible to play baseball on the field," Dorothy Ann told Ralphie. "There's no friction here." Ralphie grinned. Now he had a home plate. "Let's play ball," he called out. But before we could get back on the field, we heard a familiar honking coming from the parking lot. It was the Magic School Bus. "All aboard," Miss Frizzle cried out from the driver's seat. We all ran to the bus. Ralphie dropped Dorothy Ann's book as he raced over. "Today we're going to a baseball game," Miss Frizzle announced. We were confused. The baseball game wasn't new or different or exciting, like most of our field trips were. "Miss Frizzle, can we go someplace really unusual?" Dorothy Ann asked. She turned to Ralphie. "Like that place I showed you, Ralphie. You know, page 97. Show them." Ralphie stared out the window as we passed the baseball field. Dorothy Ann followed his glance. She gasped. Her book was flying in the dirt. "Ralphie, how could you?" Dorothy Ann asked. "Don't worry, Dorothy Ann," Miss Frizzle assured her. "We'll get your book and keep Ralphie happy too." "Bus, do your stuff," she shouted. The Magic School Bus barreled across the playground in the direction of Dorothy Ann's book. The bus spun around and around. Dorothy Ann's book blew open and we drove right into it. We watched through the windows as the pages flipped by. "Miss Frizzle, stop her," Dorothy Ann shouted excitedly. "It's page 97, the page I was talking about. It's all about the world without friction." "It looks like the world of baseball to me," Ralphie said. The bus grounded to a halt. Ralphie raced out the door. "Come on," he said. "Ralphie, watch out," Dorothy Ann warned. The ground in that field has no friction. Without anything to push against, like the friction of his feet against the ground, Ralphie couldn't stop. He bounced off one wall, slid across the field, and crashed into another wall. We lowered ourselves into the baseball field. We slipped and slid across the field. It felt like ice skating, only without the skates. Miss Frizzle blew her whistle. It was time for the game to begin. But without any friction to help us stop, we couldn't get into our positions. What were we going to do? Just then, the bus flew overhead. I had turned into a magic school bus blimp. It had turned into a magic school bus blimp. Liz was in the driver's seat. She pushed a button against a giant crane dropping down from the bus. The crane lifted us up like bowling pins and placed us in our positions on the field. Play ball, Miss Frizzle cried out. Welcome to the All Frizzle Friction-Free Baseball Classic, Miss Frizzle announced into her microphone. The ground out there has no friction. We repeat, no friction. Well, folks, believe it or not, we're coming to you from inside my textbooks, Dorothy Ann added. Our playing field is slipperier than ice. Wanda got ready to throw her first pitch. She lifted her leg, pulled back her arm, and hurled the ball at Ralphie. The ball raced in Ralphie's direction, but Wanda slid backwards towards second base. And look at that, folks, Dorothy Ann announced. The force Wanda used really got that ball going and pushed her back towards second base. Ralphie kept his eye on the ball. He swung as it sailed over the plate. Crack. Ralphie got a hot grounder right down the third baseline. Carlos tried to scoop up the ball, but without any friction to slow it down. The ball was going too fast to catch. It sped right past him. We waited for Ralphie to run to first base, but he didn't run. The force of the swinging bat started Ralphie spinning in circles. Ralphie had spun his way to first, and he kept on spinning around the base. Just as he was about to reach home, Ralphie slammed right into Dorothy Ann. They grabbed to each other and spun around the field. Miss Frizzle, Dorothy Ann suggested, I think we better call this game due to lack of friction. Miss Frizzle agreed. Game, she called out. It was time to get back on the bus to go back to the world with friction. Liz pulled out a pin from inside the bus and popped the blimp like a balloon. The bus whizzed on and finally landed safely just outside the frictionless baseball field. Now all we had to do was get on the bus. But without friction to help us walk, how could we reach the bus? Suddenly, the hood ornament on the front of the bus shot out, trailing a rope behind it. The ornament hooked itself onto the wall across the field. Grab on, class, Miss Frizzle ordered. We reached up and took the rope in our hands. A push is one force that can get us moving, Miss Frizzle said. What's the opposite? Wanda gripped the rope tightly. A pull? She grunted. Miss Frizzle smiled. Excellent, she said. And so we pulled ourselves hand over hand down the rope and off the frictionless field. We never realized that friction did so much. We all owe Dorothy Ann a big apology for laughing at her. Wow, Wanda exclaimed. You were right, Dorothy Ann. Can I borrow your book when Ralphie's through using it? Tim asked. Me too, Arnold said. Then me, Carlos chimed in. Wait a second, Ralphie interrupted. No one gets the book until we get out of it. We piled into the bus, sat down, and buckled up our seat belts. It was getting a little windy outside, so we shut the window tight. Let's book it, Miss Frizzle said. So she put the key in the ignition, but before the bus could move, we heard a loud, scary boom. The wind had lifted the cover of Dorothy Ann's book right off the ground. The cover, and about 50 pages, had smacked down onto the bus. We had to get out of there, and fast. Any suggestions, class? Miss Frizzle asked us. Better floor it, Miss Frizzle, Wanda proposed. Miss Frizzle pushed down on the gas pedal. The engine roared. The wheels spun, but the bus didn't budge. Oh no, Dorothy Ann exclaimed. The cover of the book is pushing down so hard that it's creating too much friction for the wheels to push us out. I can't believe it, Ralphie said. We're stuck in Dorothy Ann's book. What will happen to us if we can't get out? Phoebe asked nervously. Miss Frizzle just smiled. As I always say, those who are book-bound should take a look around. She opened the bus door and leaped outside. This way, class. We really didn't want to get out of the bus, but we didn't want to be stuck inside a book without our teacher either. So we followed Miss Frizzle onto page 97 of Dorothy Ann's book. Keisha tried to gather all the facts. Okay, where do we stand, she asked. Somewhere between pages 96 and 97, Carlos teased. Keisha frowned. That was not what she meant, Carlos, Keisha scolded. Hey, I was just trying to lighten things up, he apologized. Tim smiled. Carlos had just given him a great idea. Lighten things up, Tim exclaimed. That's it. We'll climb up on the roof and push up on the book. Keisha looked at him. You're saying we should hold up the book, get in the bus, and drive away? Tim nodded. How? Arnold asked. Good question, Arnold, Miss Frizzle remarked. Anyone have an answer? Dorothy Ann had another idea. Look, the letters peel off the pages, she said as she stripped off a lowercase t. I have a plan. We'll split into 2 teams. Ralphie's team goes on the roof of the bus and pushes up on the book. At the same time, my team piles letters near the book's spine that will hold the book open long enough for us to get back in the bus and drive away. Excellent plan, Ralphie told Dorothy Ann, but why doesn't your team push up on the book while my team piles the letters, okay? Dorothy Ann stared angrily at Ralphie. Not okay, she replied. Yes, okay, Ralphie insisted. Not, Dorothy Ann declared. Arnold walked up and interrupted the argument. Dorothy Ann, what is it again that makes everything stop, he asked. Dorothy Ann looked confused. Why was Arnold asking her this now? Friction, she replied curiously. Arnold turned to Ralphie. If there's a lot of friction, you can't get anywhere, right, Ralphie? He asked. Ralphie nodded. Well, I think there's a little too much friction between you two, Arnold said. So if we're ever going to get out of this book, we're going to have to get rid of the friction between us, Dorothy Ann and Ralphie said together. They reached out and shook hands. It took a little while, but we finally piled enough letters in the spine of the book to hold the cover open. Miss Frizzle led us back on the bus, and we zoomed right out of Dorothy Ann's book. As soon as the bus stopped on the school baseball field, Ralphie raced for the door. Wait a minute, Ralphie, Dorothy Ann warned. Remember what happened last time when you jumped out of the bus like that? Ralphie nodded. Dorothy Ann stepped in front of him. She slowly stepped down to the ground. She moved her foot back and forth in the sand. Never fear, friction is here, she assured Ralphie. We couldn't wait to play a game of friction-filled baseball. Dorothy Ann was the first one at bat. Wanda pitched the ball. Dorothy Ann swung and crack. Dorothy Ann exerted a lot of force on that ball. Carlos was out in the field. Would he be able to apply his force and stop the ball? Carlos held his glove high in the air, but the ball soared right out of his head. Finally, the ball dropped to the ground and rolled. Luckily for Carlos, friction caused by the grass pushing against the forward motion of the ball slowed the ball to a stop. Carlos scooped up the ball and threw it across the field. Dorothy Ann slid it for home. But where was home plate? It took us a while, but we finally found home plate. Ralphie was reading it. Dorothy Ann was right, he said. This book is great. The end.